and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video today with me, where I will be talking about what does it mean to be aligned with the heart of Gaia in our soul embodiment. So many people right now on our planet are feeling the need to search this connection with Source because they are awakening. And yet, there's another level to what does it truly mean to be in the embodiment of the Christ. Because one thing is to connect to our Source as this crown of light and our I Am presence, and the other thing is to embrace life in the physical and the sacredness of this truth that life was truly always meant to be an expression of divinity, so divinity can come into form. So I want to talk about this topic specifically because yesterday wow, the wind just started blowing in a really interesting way, and it hasn't the whole day. So I just like, wow, the energy. So yes, there's definitely presence with us during this video. I have to tell you that, although I'm sure you can't hear it, but it's really beautiful once you're aligned with Gaia. So yesterday I had a really beautiful session, and nowadays my sessions are getting more channeled. They're deeper than they used to be before, because I myself am able in this body to go deeper. And this beautiful channeling came through of Gaia herself, and I wanted to share a message about this because so many of us still often forget about the depth of unconditional love that is always available to us through the heart of the Mother. And there's a lot of people who talk about the Heavenly Father as this vertical alignment without embracing the divinity of the Goddess, which is the physical embodiment, which is Earth itself. It's the vessel through which the light, or the liquid light of spirit, can flow through. And it has been so often denied, and people have been indoctrinated into this belief that you're a sinner just by being born into this planet, just by being born into this body, just by being born to a woman. And this Catholic, I think Roman Catholic idea about the original sin and all of that. And it was all created to disconnect people from the planetary essence. So what we've created was this idea of seeking this divinity somewhere up there, our Father thou in heaven. And we forgot about the planet. So look at the chaos the planet is currently in, and everything we're creating that's a misconstruct, that's a misdesign. It's not aligned with the immaculate conception of the divine plan. So there's a whole lot of distortion, and you probably know that. But what I've actually, witnessed myself in a lot of people is we talk about love as this internal state of how we feel. So we say, well, I can feel this way when I know I'm in my Christed light, or when I'm in my higher heart, or, I am in my divinity. But we still don't understand what does it mean to be fully aligned with that physicality of that divinity, so that there can be this constant interflow. And a lot of times people will say, well, I have this experience and it's temporary, and then I lose it, and I lose a sense of this connection. And in truth, it can never be lost, because that connection is never lost. And in a lot of cases, people actually have a belief that, I'm going to lose my ascension, or I'm going to lose this state, because we somehow have a belief about how ascension is like. And there was a lot of false belief about what ascension truly is. And it's not really what it is, because there's a whole, especially in the New Age movement, there's a lot of negating of the physical experience, the experience of life, and the integration process. And we have to purge constantly. And if something's not aligned, or if it's dark, it's bad, it's evil, we have to get rid of it. And the message that was channeled, that came through Gaia, was that she, in her unconditional love, she never gets rid of things. Her love is unconditional, and just because there's beings on the planet, on her surface, that do things that are not aligned with divinity and the higher heart, and the interests of all, in the group consciousness. She doesn't just say, well, I'll shake these people off, my surface. So we forget sometimes as humans that to be in the embodiment of unconditional love is just not, the whole thing is not just, how we feel inside. And, when we feel good and, that's when I'm overflowing with energy. So that's it. And then when people start losing that sense is usually because, wow, I'm dropping icicles on me because there's such wind now. So people usually start having a sense of losing that connection because a part of their soul, their soul wants that part of them to be embraced in terms of the human heart. So it's not just that inner Christ, that heart as an essence, but to embrace the human heart. It's the same thing, when they propagated Joshua as, well, he's a divine being. He's this incarnation of divinity, so he's celibate and he's not human at all. Well, they took away his humanity, and that was really unfair thing to do because it gave a false impression to so many souls living on this planet, and because they started becoming so fragmented because of all these indoctrinations. So those of you who understand all of that already, but are still sometimes struggling with this feeling like, well, I know how I feel when I'm in my flow, and then when I lose it, how do I get it back? It's not about getting it back, first of all, because we never truly lose it. It's about understanding what a sense of illumination is, because a lot of times when we think we're being in that state of unconditional love and selfless service, we're truly not all the time to that maximum degree. That's why we're here. So the message of how to really be in that alignment without thinking things are heavy or negative and dark and running away from them, but rather stepping into this, what I call the reconciliation with that which already is. And a lot of times we want to only reconcile with our divinity. So my angelic self, my ascended self, my, all these beautiful essences. But I see people don't want to embrace these aspects that they consider as dark or, somehow not so much of the light. So that's why I recommended to you the book, The Heart of Christos from Barbara Hand Clow, because the book is such a beautiful representation of that journey of the ultimate surrender to both and neither at the same time, to truly know what divine neutrality is. So through that path, we can eventually establish a path of selfless service, because I've also witnessed a lot of people in the New Age who, and I had my own personal experience with that as well, because people come, they are lured in with the words about ascension and angels, and sometimes I talk about these things, and I've witnessed people talking about the same things without even integrating that. It didn't come from their spirit, so they start talking about these things and it's not embodied and it doesn't come from their essence. They're totally going in the unauthentic path. And what this creates is this illusion, it's this distortion, while at the same time, these people stop growing at the level of their humanity, so kind of like always going around the same circles. There's also something that I need to share about this as well, is something that was also shared in, I think it was one of the stories about Joshua as well, is that when he did become, he wasn't incarnated physically anymore, so he went off, and some say, well, he ascended. Well, in a way, he was overlighting the disciples with this golden light of illumination, and they felt it. So it's kind of like they were enclosed or wrapped around with that light, and they felt differently, and they felt, their instant activation in their bodies. But what happened after, when he left, they saw, well, they're still not integrated in all of that, so they need to do all of that, by their own, on their own, by themselves. So I've experienced this myself when I physically met some people who, upon meeting me, they instantly opened up and they instantly were activated. And for a while, it felt like they were flowing and, they were telling me all these beautiful things and, but after a while, I felt my energy withdrawing from them, and only from the story I learned that this was actually the same process, but while I'm still holding physical form. So those of us who are illumined beings, we often do that. So we wrap around people with this light, and they will feel it. They're going to get this instant boost into an activation or an awakening process if they choose so. But how they will integrate it is not totally up to us. Well, it's not up to us at all, because we can only influence and create our reality. But what does it truly mean to love unconditionally, even when at the same time, people will say different things to you all of a sudden, or people will start acting differently? or you yourself will have an experience where you can't suddenly feel the same that you used to for someone or for something. And you will say, now I no longer feel that illumination because it's not flowing through me. Well, that's where this earth embodiment and your own physical embodiment lesson comes in, because you have to master the practice of this, what you call the Christ in love. Now everyone talks about it, but so few people are still truly immersing in it by, physical embodiment. And I've witnessed a lot of people, talking all these words, but when you tune into the energy, half of them are just playing around this story of ascension, but they don't know how to serve another being. They don't know what it means to be selflessly available to them, to channel spirit guidance. And there's a lot of sugarcoating and things that are really happening on the superficial level. Well, I always tell you, it's not what ascension is. It's a threefold process of awakening, ascending, and then descending that light so you can truly overflow with the light of illumination. So when you will have the experience of something lacking and missing, you can't feel the same way. That's probably a message from your soul that there's an aspect of you need to reacquaint yourself with. And that was either an aspect that had a fear related to it. Sometimes it's a fear that says, ascension feels like this, and when my chakras are feeling like that, and I'm activating this way and that way, that will be the same. That won't be the same for anyone, because everyone will have their unique experience when they feel in the flow. So when you say, well, my chakras are activated, or I'm in the mode of my love, it will be different for everyone. But then we're always going to be asked to take a step further, right? So when the feeling will come that that's not available to you, you're going to have to look for the patterns that are part of the integration process of what now you need to gain on the human level. And the message of Earth was that at those times, nothing will move us. We can stay or sit miserable and say, well, now I'm not feeling it. Too bad. Woe is me. But at those times, you really need to remember the unconditional love of the mother and how she moves, how she courageously fights for things. And that's how integration takes place. So the fierce feminine essence of the embodiment, which will go deep into matter. And a lot of people will forget that the spirituality is not like this inner esoterical path alone. It's the humanity that needs to be embraced within the Christed nature. And that's usually the hardest step for people. One thing is when you're in your cave and you're really feeling it, and then people come and things come and situations come and you can't feel it. And there will still be things that you hold that you don't hold your own responsibility for. Like people say, well, that triggered me into that state, so it took my power away from me, so now I can't feel my love. Well, nothing ever, as you know, takes that from you. So usually it's a reflection, it's a mirror coming through your soul of what aspect of you needs to be reconciled with. And that aspect is not always what you think, well, my angelic self, I need to reconcile with that to be more ascended. No, for you to be ascended in the physical, we often need to take the other part of the play, which is equal to the game of light, and go into every aspect that has had fear or it has a denial of the human experience even. And it said, well, this is not how I'm supposed to feel. Because a lot of times people have beliefs about how ascension feels, and when they're not feeling that way, they think, well, there's a fear, like I'm not ascending, something's wrong, what's happening? Or I used to see light beings, now I don't anymore. We forget about the stages. But then the stages of the process can become revealed to us because we already have a fixed idea of where we're in and how it's supposed to look like, so we can move forward. Well, that's what happens to people who only live ascension in the mind. Like I've told you in the beginning, there's people who play out ascension and it's all this fabricated idea presented as this story, but it's like a mimic. It's like a chimera. It's a vision, and it's not yet the embodied process, because it's like they're playing in their own bubble and playing their game, and they might be a master of that game in their illusion, but not necessarily it's going to be an exact reflection of what does it truly mean to be a Christ on earth. What does it mean, And there's people who work with masters who've gone through it before, and they work truly with spirit. And they do take the steps, and they recognize humanity, that aspect, and they will never say, well, when I'm not feeling this, then I'm not divine, or I have a bad day, then I'm not connected. They will simply recognize the stages, and because they won't have a filter to what this is supposed to mean, the true guidance about their stage will come. So if you have a period like I have right now, or I had for a few months, where there was a lot of challenging things in the body, if I had a judgment over that process, I could easily say, well, something's wrong and I'm not ascending or ascended in the physical, or, instead of recognizing that as a part of the process already, because the trust cannot come through when I have that belief. So that can sometimes be very hard for people, or to let go. And they have this idea that to be ascended is you're always doing, you always need to feel a certain way. And it always has to be fantastic and superb and sublime, and you're flowing. And no, it doesn't feel always like that. And even Joshua shared how he had issues on earth too. He had challenging moments and doubts as well as a part of the initiation. And the thing is that ascension is really not a journey of sensualization. It's not a sensualization of the experience. It's the experience itself in its randomness, in truth, in its core of the earthliness that we're now living, is just as well as, so sometimes people who present this idea of themselves that are always like flying and in the light and all fluffy, and I can't take them seriously, because these people are obviously not undergoing the other part of the polarity, so they're not integrated in terms of a polarity of the yin and yang, light and shadow, and masculine and the feminine, how they're playing out in truth of our ascended self. So that was the first thing I really wanted to share. Now I have this story that I read also in the Heart of Christos. And because it was such a beautiful story, I want to share it with you, because so many times we think we're in the unconditional love state. And we're so pure and it's all so perfect. But when you read that story, something clicks within you to see what is this light of total acceptance, of non-judgment, of complete reconciliation with everything, with every aspect. And how does it change? How does it alter the reality not only of yourself but of others? And that's truly what that means, to embody that heart of divinity. So there was this story, and it was a story about one of the lifetimes as a Lakota shaman person. And that tribe, that was a woman who experienced the life, the story coming through. And she was noticing that all the men are gone, and all of a sudden, because their men were gone, at that time another tribe came, and they actually stole their women, and they killed some children and some people, and they took them on their journey when they went to search for their new place to live, to find a new establishment. And actually during that process, she also lost a child, because there was a man who kind of, put the child down. I think it just hit the child down, and the child was dead instantly. And she didn't even see, because they were wearing masks, so she couldn't see who that person was, and there was a few men. So these men then took the women, and of course, because men need the feminine essence, and they violated them, and they raped them, and they were also torturing them a bit, and all of that. And she was experiencing that as very difficult. But these women, they had the wisdom of the grandmothers, because the teaching of that tribe, of the Lakota, was that you cannot hold anger within yourself. So she lost the child. And she, at that time, knew that she can't hold anger at how events are supposed to unfold further on. So she actually, instead of judging these men who were such savages at that time, she asked herself, well, I don't know what had actually happened to them, for them to become such beasts now. They're so dehumanized, they are so fragmented, and I don't know what happened to them. So suddenly one of the men has chosen her to belong to him only. So he started his, she's mine. So she recognized that she will now be his wife, and she said, well, the best thing I can do is to love that man, and I will never know whether that was the man who killed my child, but I really feel I need to give that man myself completely. So even though they were violated, she saw that as the gift of love, the gift of life that she can give to, in a way, not just save herself, but save, to really save the tribe as well, to bring them this new love that they've lost during the process of whatever happened to them just as well. So she explained how during the time they were together and she offered all of herself unconditionally to him, he started to glow and his light started to increase, and he was starting to get really open and loving, and he just was changing because she didn't have an agenda, why she's doing it and why she's being like that, because you can't be unconditional with agenda. It's rigged. It doesn't happen that way. So all of a sudden, she knew she was going to have a child eventually, and she said, well, if I do conceive a child, I can't do it with anger inside my heart, because then that soul will be trapped again in these karmic cycles, because that was the basics of their teaching. So she actually purified herself, and she really felt nothing but love, and eventually she did get pregnant. She did add a child. But what happened with this man is, the moment that happened, she knew that was the man who killed her previous child, and she knew that the child's going to come back, but she didn't know what gender. So what happened was, she actually got a girl. And in that tribe that has now overtaken them, these women, their tradition was that the firstborn, if it's a girl, they just leave it there to be eaten by vultures or worms, maggots, whatever. And she somehow knew that if she hadn't played herself that way with love, the man would actually really do according to that tradition. But somehow she connected to him energetically, and she felt he will let her keep the child, and he did. So it was a girl, and towards the end, the girl came out really loving her father because he loved her, because the woman gave of herself unconditionally, and that's the true teaching of unconditional love. So no matter what kind of circumstance, seeing the bigger picture, that it's all intertwined, that everything happens for a reason, and that you can't be the one putting that finger of judgment, and blaming whatever. So she actually, towards the end, she shared how that teaching really helped them, because as you know, later invaders came, the white people, and they had more challenges. But the teaching eventually that she gave of herself through her embodiment of love, it was so simple. It was just hold no anger in your heart. And that was the tradition of the as you know, the white buffalo woman, and she felt her essence working through them. And we all talk about the pipe of peace, and but the level that this story goes into, that's truly exceptional. And the whole tribe somehow started to really change, and the whole idea here is that you can't end separation with more anger, whatever it is towards. And that is the basic teaching of the mother of the planet. So too often when we're in that state ourselves, we forget about this unconditional love that the mother essence shares with all life, because it doesn't say, well, these souls are naughty, 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 let's just throw them off the planet so that these other ones can just have fun and do whatever they want to because they're good ones. Well, not really, because you have to have that sight of illumination to really understand what love of creation is. And eventually every soul will get there when they start accepting not just the Christ as that light that comes somewhere from above, but the light of the human heart that grows into the heart of the Christ through these examples of true love and integration of the beloved essence, which is that path of unconditional love in human form, just as it is in all the other forms of life. So when you notice yourself, how you are with other people, and if sometimes that changes, ask yourself why and which aspect is being reflected to you. Because I myself had, I learn also through life, not just through direct wisdom. I anchor here, but life experiences also teach me, and that's how I integrate, through experience. And experience is something that we should never deprive ourselves of, because the fear that tells us, can't feel this, so you will rather limit the experience before it even happens. So without it, you can't integrate. So you want to stay safe, and in your safe ascended inward ascended mode. But that's not truly, you know, when you go out into the world and you can't feel it anymore, well, then it's not there, because once it's rooted, it's always there. Whatever happens, whoever it is, whatever it's said to you, whatever shared, you emanate that. And let that story be a beautiful example, because it was for me as well. You know, and you don't have to be a physical mother of a child, or, you know, you can have the experience of mothering in a way of helping others and being a part of their lives just as well. And I know we can't always be there for everyone, ultimately in all ways, but there are ways. So when you have a day when you feel, or a moment, or maybe even a few months, or, you know, the thing where you can't feel that illumination within you, ask yourself, which part does now want for me to be integrated into that aspect? Which aspect wants to reconcile with the whole that I am? Because that's the case. So it goes like this: activation, integration, and people get scared. They still get scared. They say, well, I'm not feeling it. What's wrong with me? I'm disconnected. You're not disconnected, because you can't be. It's just that when there's feelings that somehow differ from what you feel when you say, wow, I'm at my ultimate, they differ for a reason, because life wants to expand you so you can feel love even when there's a lack of this, what you call the sensualization. You know, like, wow, I feel wow, and a good day, wow, the sun is shining, I was out, I was hiking all day, I was in the snow, beautiful. And tomorrow fog might come, and, you know, I get tired and work all day, whatever. And am I still feeling that inwardly? And then how am I expressing it outwardly? I'm just giving more of the essence of love and sharing it. Because the basics of everything and every reason we are here is not just to gain more knowledge. Well, we gain it, just, you know, it just comes when you're ready. It has to be a natural, organic experience. But we are mostly here for that, for the purpose of love. Because love and knowledge together, as you know, create wisdom. And those who are wise, we know this path, and we want to share with the rest of everyone how beautiful it is once you feel that way. Because I recently had my own experience where time and time again I had these aches and pains that I didn't have before, and I was like, what's happening? But at the same time, when I tune into how I feel internally about that, the pain itself could not break down what I felt inside. That was the point. And I realized it was actually initiation. And how, in spite of feeling the pain, and a part of me said, wow, it's killing my humanity, it's killing my will to, you know, be here and do all I do and of serving. And it didn't prevent me. I still, in January, when it was actually most intense, I actually did the most videos and I did the most work. And I was like, how, you know, and you forget about things like pain, and you're just in the vortex of being in love and sharing the passion that you have for something that you do. And it just comes randomly, and you forget about it. Oh, what was the ache? What was the pain? Oh, what was the challenge? What was the issue? Because sometimes we focus too much on what we think is the issue. It's like, I'm not connected. And then you say it to yourself so many times, well, you have an experience of not feeling connected. Because a lot of people forget they're already at the level of mastery where they say something, ow. I just got a piece of ice in my eye. They say something and it really becomes their experience. And they think it's something coming from the outside of something, you know, wrong with them. And they're not owning the full responsibility that sometimes their words are already so powerful. They've said it. Oops, now it is happening because you are so masterful already. You're a complete influencer of your reality. So take that into consideration the next time you have an experience that you don't like. And see how it began in the first place. And by owning that full responsibility for everything, then we will see that all these aspects that we say, oh, dark, energy vampires, Illuminati, wars here, wars in heaven, the dark fallen ones, the recalcitrant souls, all of that. These are all aspects calling out for, you know, embrace me, integrate me, love me. And each one of us has to do that unconditionally within ourselves, with our patterns, because you can't truly love the world into its infinity before you do your own work. You have to do that internally. That's why unconditioned love begins with self-love. And then that self is no longer separate from the rest. And that's truly a state of grace. As recently Spirit revealed to me, said, well, state of grace is not something we can really put into words, right? No one knows, describe grace, what it is. It's so mystical in a way. But Spirit said it's not a state you can experience as an individual. Meaning that, of course, we're individuals here, but when you have an experience of the me, I, this, my feelings, my ascension, you can't feel grace. You feel grace when you are becoming an extension of something much vaster, much wider than you are. It doesn't end with you. And you're just aligned with yourself, with the planet, with everything. And because of that, I wanted to share a message of Gaia, of the planet herself, as an essence about this state and how we can tune into her essence, because we forget that. So many people are anchoring upwards. We don't anchor downwards. We don't just feel for a while. And I feel it all the time because, as you know, I'm in nature all the time, and I just, I'm in awe all the time, and that's why I feel good most of the time. And when I don't, I engage in service and I feel good again. And it's, like I said, ascension is not the same as feeling good. Ascension is a state of illumination that transcends all that you believe is good or bad. So in any state, you're capable of receiving illumination, and it flows through you. So I had an experience where at the end of the session, I came to the other room, and my mom was there. She looks at me for a while. She says, "What's happening? You're glowing." And I'm like, "What?" She said, "You're glowing." And I said, "Well, I had a session. It was very channeled." She said, "Wow, it shows because the essence just overflows you." And that's, for me, it's an expression of grace when the you becomes a much vaster experience of this existence in so many forms of creation that you connect to, that we can connect to, but we forget. So the next time you have an experience and you say, well, a state of ascension I've experienced before, but now I can't tune into that. Well, guess what? You're at the other part of the spiral. And people forget that when you have a fear and you don't integrate it and it's still there affecting you, if you entered the more advanced level of the spiral of life, then that fear would not only pull you down, but because you expand more, that fear would... you don't take that fear with you into a higher vibratory form, because what ascension means is that each time you have a certain experience vibrationally, because you're always shifting vibrationally, at that level you either integrate something there before moving to the next octave, or you just have to go circle yet again around and round. But it's not like, okay, now you're a bad student or it's a lesson. It's just something you haven't integrated to its completion. And that's why you can move to the other lifted part of the spiral in vibratory embodiment. That's basically what ascension is. And people who are only experiencing mentally, they're always going round and around. And, well, superficially, their life might seem abundant and, it's all happening. But the inward didn't grow. The heart of the flame of that illumination cannot grow in the space, which is somehow limited by an illusion, by mental cognition instead of reality. We have to move into life. That's what's happening. So the sun is going down, which means it's time to end the video. And I hope you will like the short channel message through the essence of Gaia, which for me is that ultimate experience here on Earth. Not just the physicality, the beauty of nature physically, but the essence, when you feel into that love. So sometimes you say, I'm feeling disconnected or not loved, tune into Gaia. Instantly you will feel so loved. So imagine this as the crown of light, then root, and feeling one with a mother, the great carrier of life here in this form that we are now in. And you will feel, because you'll be a pillar between that, one and the other. So the crown of light, your I am, and the physical being that you are. Thank you for watching. As always, so much love, wisdom, and power, and talk to you soon. Dear beloveds, I am your Earth Mother, and this is a message of unconditional love for you. So many life forms walk on my surface, and so much love is gathered within my core crystal for all these forms of life. to truly love and to awaken your heart of humanity, you need to awaken both to the love of Source and the Goddess that feeds life, that nourishes life as it walks in physical form, as you are now here in your sacred bodies. So many of you are asking to feel more love, to attune to more of the love, to feel the flow of life force. And many of you ask yourself how to do that, because there are times when you can feel the pulse of your human heart and how it moves, and there are times when you can't feel it as strongly. And I tell you that it is your own responsibility to move life forward, to move your heart, to unite with my heartbeat, with the pulse of life that runs through my entire being. For I know what unconditional love truly means, and when you forget that, melt into unity with me. Lie on the surface of my body or contemplate on the love that I pour out every single now, for I never cease to rotate, even though there are forms of life that still abuse the beauty, the kindness, and the nurturance of life that I provide for all. I don't say, well, these beings abuse me, so therefore I will stop sending them love and spinning around my axis, absorbing the rays of the sun, uniting with the galactic core and the pulse of life to provide a higher quality of life. I do not do that, for my orientation is to feed all the children with divine mana and how it is created in the tangible form as you are now represented in these sacred bodies. So when there are moments when you can't feel the love, decide to do something selfless for yourself, for someone else, or for others in general. But most of all, show loving kindness to my planet, to your planet, to my being, that is also the same as the heart of your human being. To truly become enlightened in a human form means to embrace the love of Source and the love of the Goddess as it's expressed in creation. The love that you have for yourself should be the same amount of love that you pour to your fellow beings through the core of what I am as Gaia, the representation of the Divine Mother. So when you have a moment of difficulty, remember how it is to a mother when her child wakes her up in the middle of the night with crying so loud. Her unconditional love and acceptance cannot make her say, oh, I will not get up, for I'm too sleepy to feed my child or to take care of its needs. The love of the selfless life moves her heart, for her heart and the heartbeat of the child are one. And the same goes for me. Although too many did not feel me as truly alive, they have forgotten. They are looking only upwards into the sky to seek their newer gods, and they forget about the love of the planet and everything that they do to the planet that does not reflect the love they're seeking somewhere up there in the skies, waiting for the new god to appear, waiting for a new belief system to finally produce some form of results, instead of tending to the needs of their bodies, the unconditional love they need to receive, they need to share with others, and they need to also provide to the planet. For life is a continuous circling, rotating pulse that feeds into every cell of your being. So when you have that moment, when you can feel the heart, remember what the selfless service truly represents and connect to me. As I've said, lie down on my surface, find a sacred spot in nature and contemplate on my essence and what true love feels like. For I do not separate. I do not burst out with anger when there's beings who provide certain forms of life that are distorted, that offer manipulation and control of other human beings and my own consciousness, for I know that in truth I am free, and I share that freedom with all. I do not spew certain forms such as volcanoes, earthquakes, fires, floods, in a way to get rid of certain life forms that reside on my surface. I simply need to energetically align to the next vibratory level that I'm expanding to, and I try to do it in the most optimal way so that it does not affect you. But my surface is so crowded in a way, it is so populated that sometimes it is very challenging to do. In cooperation with the sun, together we synergize to provide this optimum energetic synchronicity and vibrational alignment that would sustain life in an optimal way. You, however, do not always function on that level of consciousness. So when you start awakening to the source of your being, your sacred essence, do not forget to enter into the sacredness of your physical temple, for that is the direct connection that you have with me and my consciousness. And then you remember your power through the power of the elemental grid that provides life, so that you can become that same sustenance for life. For often you become miserable because you do not share your life essence forward. The heart of the Christ is not only your inner feeling of love, but how you express and share that love in a selfless way. So take my example. Take the example of the sun that does not cease to shine. And we work together in unison, and the whole planetary system within the solar system does, traversing the spiral of the Milky Way. And as your heart aligns with the cosmic pulse of life through the galactic pulse, to the galactic core, the consciousness of the whole solar system, the radiance of the ascending sun, and my own essence as Gaia, you return to that natural alignment of your ascending body. And you can feel my pulsation, and you can feel my love. For those of you who serve me are always provided for, because you know that unconditional love. You know the love of the mother, for you live it yourself within your own human example. And your cosmic heart is the same as your human heart. They are no longer separate. For eons of time, that was experienced as so, but for now, so many are awakening to the fact that the human experience can directly reflect the Christed Logos. So from my bosom of that love I feel for you, I ask you, whenever you feel down, or you say you can't feel the alignment with that divinity and the love of Source, don't just look up there. Don't just talk about liquid light, but bring your root to my being. Connect with me in a liquid splendor, for that anchors that what you're seeking forth in the experience of the now. Feel your feet. Feel your hands and how you are reverberating with all the pulses of the cosmic energies, bringing it back into my core, and how we work together in unison to provide more love for all. For when you start to live like that, not just contemplation-wise, but in true embodiment with every step of the way, you will feel radical changes, because the core of who you are will become fully illumined in the most practical, tangible way in your everyday life. And I greet you with this love that you can feel every day when the sun comes up, when the moon rises, and every time you are out there in the purity of nature, spending time with me, with my essence, feeling the purity that you truly are, returning to the sacredness of your body, to the beauty of your physical form, and the reverence of all life in creation. And you never forget to move life forward when life feels difficult or challenging. For that connection with me, in the almighty presence that you are, creates a constant dynamic that pushes you forward in constant alignment with your divine purpose. And so it is.
Come into my world, the world of the elven song, magical.